Well guys, by the looks of it and the looks of the radar, we got some rain coming, and that brings up some great questions when it comes to fishing around rain events. Should I fish before the rain? Should I fish during a rain? What happens after a rain to fish behavior? And in this video, I'm going to cover some of those questions. So I'm going to give you 7 key points to pay attention to when it comes to fishing both before, during, and after rain events. And I'm going to give you 3 tips to stay dry on those days you do end up fishing in the rain. So let's get started with key point number 1. Now, one of the biggest questions that anglers have when it comes to rain and rain systems is how do fish react to the barometric pressure changes? Typically, as a system moves in, you have a falling barometer, and then it kind of levels off, and then as the system moves out and the wind switches, that barometric pressure will start to rise. Now, conventional wisdom as well as my experience dictate that dropping pressure at the front end of a system as it's moving in can be very, very good fishing. It's a great time to cover lots of water because some fish are definitely going to turn on and be aggressive, not necessarily all the fish. So you may have to move around until you find those aggressive fish, but once you find them, they can really bite well. Now, as that barometer kind of bottoms out, typically during the actual rain event, the fishing can continue to be good, but if it lasts into a day or two and it kind of lengthens, the longer it goes, the tougher the fishing can get. And some of those really extended low pressure systems can get really tough. Now, that said, as soon as that barometer starts rising again after the front, that can really turn the fish on again. And I've had some great days fishing that wind on the backside of a front. Now, as that front kind of blows out, the wind starts to calm down, the temperatures kind of drop. For a day or two after that, that post-cold front, kind of high pressure system can be tough. But rising and falling are great, and the low is a great time to fish as long as it doesn't last too long. Now, water clarity is another huge factor when it comes to rain and rain systems. And, obviously you're going to have the clearest water before the rain. And in some places after the rain can get really, really muddy or really, really cloudy, especially in river systems or places with rivers dumping into them. I've found that really the best place to fish after a rainstorm when that water starts to get dingy or cloudy is on the transition. So whether that's a mud line where there's an inflow or an inlet that's dumping muddy water into the lake and it's kind of meeting up with that clear edge, that's a great place to fish. If you're fishing a river system, fish upstream or downstream of an inflow where there's another muddy river dumping into it, because typically above that inflow you're going to have clearer water, below it's going to be muddier. Find that transition, and fish tend to hang around that transition area. Now, you also may have to change your tactics. After a rain, you get that big blowout, you get tons of muddy water, you may have to fish louder, more aggressive, more flashy, bright colored baits to get those fish to bite. A huge factor when it comes to actually fishing in the rain is that rain is going to obviously drop light levels, and the rain hitting the surface of the water is going to also create ripples, which is going to drop the light even more. And on top of that, you're also going to get some noise in the water from all that rain hitting the surface. So what that translates to is a lot of times fish feel much more comfortable shallower in those types of situations, and you can get away with a lot more presence and noise in the water, and you can get closer to fish oftentimes. So fishing in the rain is a great time to really hit those really key points where fish are going to feed and where you may have trouble getting close enough to fish sometimes to catch them. For instance, smallmouth up on a shallow rock flat that are really spooky. You get a rainstorm, those fish might not see you or hear you at all, and you'll be able to get really close to them and catch them. So during the rain is a great time to go and fish places where stealth is a key to getting on those fish. Now, another factor is water levels. So water levels can change drastically in some systems, others not so much. So if you just have a pothole lake or a lake with a dam that has an overflow, that stays consistent, those lakes are not going to fluctuate that much. But some mountain reservoirs and western reservoirs, rivers themselves, those can really fluctuate during a rainstorm or a rain event and for a time period afterwards. And what I've found is that the fishing can be excellent as that water starts to come up. Those fish really start to feed because food is becoming more accessible, whether it's on the banks of a reservoir that's flooding or a river that's washing food to those fish. And that's a great time to fish. Now, as that peaks and kind of levels off at high stage, typically that is the hardest time to fish because the fish are going to spread out and they're also going to be full from eating all that food that was presented to them. So that's a tougher time to fish, and you often have to fish really, really small strike zones. Those fish aren't going to move very far from the bait, and oftentimes you have dark water, so it's really, really precise casting with loud lures to get those lures in the face of the fish. Now, as that water starts to drop, those fish have fed, they've kind of had time to relax, they're starting to push back into those holes and deeper areas where they were before the flood. And that's a great time to fish as well as that water's coming down. Now, if you're fishing one of those systems that doesn't raise or lower very much with rain events, pay attention to inlets and inflows because those can bring a wash of food into the lake and they can concentrate fish, even in those lakes that don't rise or fall very much. Now, one thing a lot of people don't realize about rain is it can raise and lower water temperatures very quickly, especially in shallower bodies of water and rivers. So in the springtime, you get a nice cold rain, it's going to drop the shallow water temperatures really rapidly and push those fish back out to deeper, more stable temps. And in the summertime, if you've got hot weather, a big old thunderstorm in the summertime can drop those temps enough, and it can actually rejuvenate the shallows by adding oxygen to those shallows as well. A lot of fish that could not be in that warmer, shallower water will now push up shallow right after a rainstorm because of the extra oxygen and cooler water temps. So pay attention to those water temperatures post-rain because that can really affect the fishing. Now, what about thunderstorms? What about lightning and thunder? How do those affect fish? Well, obviously, safety first. If you're fishing near a thunderstorm, you should get off the water. You should put the rods away, get back to shelter immediately. It can spook fish temporarily. And typically, if you have a big thunderstorm with lots of lightning, it's going to push fish to cover, and they may stay there and be a little spooky for a few hours after that storm. So if you're going to fish directly after a lightning storm, I would recommend looking for heavy cover, fish tight to it, use slower moving presentations that are going to stay in the strike zone, such as live bait, finesse lures, at least for a couple hours until those fish start getting more comfortable and start moving back out away from that cover. All right, guys, before I move on to number 7, I just wanted to thank you for watching this video. And if you're getting value out of this video, hit subscribe below and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And go check out hookedupwisconsin.com. I've got some really cool stuff there. And one of the new things I'm offering is fishing coaching or consulting. So I'm offering a 30-minute or 60-minute phone call. We can talk about whatever you want when it comes to fishing. We can talk about your electronics. I can help you plan a trip. I can also cover any of the topics in any of my videos much, much better there in a one-on-one conversation than I can in these videos. So, and check out the relevant sunglasses there as well. I'm offering a chance to win a fishing trip with me in 2026 if you purchase a pair of those before September 30th. So again, thanks for watching. Let's get back into point number 7. Now, the last very common question that I get when it comes to fishing around rainstorms is how bad does the fishing get after the rain? How bad are those post-front, cold front conditions? Well, I'll tell you what, I've had some great fishing post-rain, especially as that temperature starts to drop and the wind kicks up and those clouds start to blow out. That can be a great time to fish. The tough part comes in a little bit later when that barometer has leveled off, the clouds are gone, the wind starts to die, and you get that sun shining down in the water really brightly. That's the tough time to fish, typically post-front. So it's not necessarily right away. But when you get into that period, you just got to slow down, use finesse baits, use some live bait, and just pick off a few fish where you can, and don't have super high expectations until that weather kind of levels off and the fish start to get back into a normal, stable weather pattern again. So that pretty much covers our 7 points. And I'm gonna get into those 3 tips to stay dry here in a second, but let's just go over a quick summary, starting with pre-rain, kind of through post-rain. So pre-rain, when those clouds are starting to build, that front's on its way in, the pressure's dropping, go out and fish. Fish hard, fish aggressive, cover water, find those feeding fish, and that is a great time to be out there. Now, as that rain starts to settle in and that pressure is kind of bottoming out, fish those spots that have finicky fish on them or spooky fish. Take advantage of that cover that you're getting from the rain and make sure you're fishing a little bit shallower, and you should catch plenty of fish. And again, as that pressure starts to rise, you get wind, you get kind of that nastier post-front weather, keep fishing because the fishing can be great. And then as that barometer kind of levels out after it rises and that sun starts shining, the wind starts to calm down, definitely make sure you lower your expectations on the aggressiveness of the fish. Fish slower, fish more finesse. And then keep in mind too that after a thunderstorm, oftentimes you'll have spooky fish for a few hours. So fish tight to cover until they kind of move out. And then after a cold spring rain, fish deeper. After a warm summer rain, fish shallower. And you should have great luck. And that hopefully kind of gives you just a great primer on what to expect when it comes to fishing around the rain. Now let's get into those 3 tips really quick before we close out. Now tip number 1 for staying dry is always have a plan. You always need a plan for things to change. Weather can change really fast, especially up here in the North Country. So I always have rain gear in a place I know where it's at. I have a dry bag for things that I don't want to get wet, or at least a dry compartment in my boat. And then I also have sealing compartments and storage boxes for all the stuff that I want to keep dry. In case it does downpour, you'll be all set. So tip number 2 for staying dry is keeping rain gear in your boat at all times and having quality rain gear. Quality rain gear just means rain gear that's going to breathe, because there's nothing worse than getting just as wet from perspiration as you would have from the rain. And then make sure it's got sealing cuffs and a good hood and good coverage to make sure that you stay dry. And then don't forget waterproof shoes. I keep a pair of boat shoes in the boat at all times in case it gets wet, because there's nothing worse than being all dry except having soggy feet the rest of the day. So I'll leave a link for a pair of those down below too that I like. And really that's all there is to it. Just keep that stuff with you, because you never know when the weather's going to change. Now number 3 is a tip that I had in a video I did this spring about just some essentials to have in the boat. And that is to keep a tarp in your boat. So I always keep a 10 by 10 tarp folded up in the bottom of one of my compartments. And anytime I see rain coming, especially a downpour, I can just pull that tarp out, cover the stuff out on my deck that I don't want to get wet, like my soft tackle bag, my camera bag. Even I can get under it and stay dry in a downpour, or a buddy can throw it on as a poncho if he forgot his rain gear. Just a super, super handy thing to have in your boat when it comes to fishing in open water when rain could be a factor. So there you have it, guys. There's a bunch of information for you when it comes to fishing in the rain. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Get hooked up.